We're counting down to Prime Minister Narendra Modi's state visit to the US. There's a lot on the schedule. The Prime Minister will attend a state dinner. He will also address the US Congress. There are events tailored for the cameras, very high on symbolism. But those may not be the high point of this trip. That could be a defense deal. The US and India are expected to sign an agreement on jet engines. Reports say it's close to the finish line. What exactly is in the deal? Well, two parties are involved, like in most deals. General Electric, which is a US multinational, and Hindustan Aeronauticals Limited, HAL, which is an Indian defense firm. The deal is basically joint production. GE will transfer technology to HAL. HAL will then produce the engines in India. They could be used on the homegrown Tejas jet. But what's in it for both sides? For India, of course, the gains are tangible. Your domestic defense industry gets a big boost, which means more jobs, more cutting-edge technology. India can replace its aging fleet of jets. And what's in it for the Americans? Well, a defense deal with India. The US has been trying to reduce India's dependence on Russian arms. Historically, most Indian equipment has been Soviet or Russian. So this is a big change. Washington will see it as a sign of deepening relationship. Now, to be clear, this is a major shift for both countries. In the past, the US has refused to share critical technology with India, like GPS during the Kargil War. India needed it. The Americans refused. Same with nuclear submarines. Washington repeatedly refused to help India. In the end, New Delhi had to turn to Russia for the subs. The jet engine falls in the same category. It is highly advanced and critical technology. Only 4 countries have aced it: the US, Russia, France, and the UK. Even China buys jet engines from Russia. So sharing this technology requires jumping through a lot of hoops. The Commerce Department must clear it, the State Department must clear it, the Pentagon must clear it, and finally, the US Congress must approve it. Only then can jet engine technology be shared. Now, American officials seem confident that all of this will be done. In fact, that's one reason US National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan visited India. He was in New Delhi this week. He spoke very specifically about removing obstacles to technology transfer. Listen to what he said.
As we look ahead to the state visit that Prime Minister Modi will be embarking upon in Washington next week, along with Ajit Doval and a significant delegation from India, a number of the deliverables at that visit are not just bullet points on a page. They are fundamentally designed to remove those obstacles in defense trade, in high-tech trade, in investment in each of our countries, in taking away obstacles that have stood in the way of better collaboration among our scientists and researchers.
So I guess the old wariness is gone. The US now wants to share critical tech with India. And it's not just engines, not just jet engines. Yesterday, we told you about a drone deal, how the US was urging India to clear it. New Delhi has done that now. The Defense Acquisition Council has given its approval. The deal is likely to be announced during the Prime Minister's trip. We don't have the specifics, but reports say 30 Predator drones for $3 billion. That's what India is looking at. What explains this American eagerness? This U-turn from the last decades. In 2 words, geopolitical realignment. The US needs India on 2 fronts. First, to contain the challenge from China, and second, to isolate Russia further. And that wasn't the case for most of the 20th century. And it's not just the US. Other Western countries are also joining in. Earlier this month, Germany struck a deal with India. ThyssenKrupp will jointly make submarines with India's Mazagon dock. All of this is good news. Relying heavily on one seller is not ideal for any country. In 2022, around 45% of India's arms came from Russia. 5 years back in 2017, this was 62%. So you can see the shift here. India has been gradually reducing Russian imports. The Ukraine war will likely speed that up because A, Russia's weapons deliveries have slowed down, and B, their effectiveness is in doubt. Having said that, let's be clear about Washington's endgame. It's not some noble effort to help India. It's a self-serving policy. So how should New Delhi plan this out? The ultimate goal should be self-reliance, to build these critical technologies yourself. Until then, such defense deals are a big help. They will boost India's domestic production. They will also help us prepare for the China challenge. 7.7 lakh That's how many Indian students went abroad to study last year. It was a 6-year high, also a 68% rise since 2021. There is no denying that these numbers are big, and they're not surprising either. The aspiration of studying abroad is ubiquitous in India. Whether we like it or not, it's a lifelong dream for millions. Many Indian families want to send their children to foreign colleges, and for this they make huge sacrifices sometimes. Many take big loans. Some even mortgage their homes or take loans against family jewelry because they see foreign education as a worthwhile investment. But what's the return on this investment? Well, that varies and conditions apply. In the best case scenario, the students find jobs abroad and do well. In the worst case, they don't even find the college seat they paid for. And that's happening to some Indian students in Canada. And we'll come to that. But let me also first tell you about a third scenario. They finish their education abroad, they return to India, but they don't find a job here. I'll show you the numbers. This is between 2015 and 2019. Only 22% of the students who studied abroad and returned to India were able to secure a job. So almost 80% of those students who returned could not even land a job. So foreign education can be a tricky investment. Which brings me to the story from Canada. Hundreds of Indian students have been left in the lurch. They began their overseas degrees in 2017 and 2018. By March this year, many of them had graduated. Some even got work permits. So they applied for permanent residency in Canada to become legal residents in the country, in Canada, and to work there. But instead of residency, they got letters of deportation. Do you know why? Because their college acceptance letters were fake. They may not have been aware of this, but all this while, they were illegal immigrants in Canada. What do you think happened here? The students had been scammed. They'd fallen prey to a fraudulent education counselor in Punjab. They were given fake admission letters in exchange for exorbitant fees. The students said they were wronged, so they protested for days. And now they've finally received temporary relief. The government of Canada has decided to not deport the Indian students just yet.
International students who are genuine applicants that came to Canada to study and were victimized by fraudsters will be given permission to remain in Canada. Those who were complicit in a fraudulent scheme will be held accountable for their actions and will bear the full consequences of Canadian law for their illicit behavior.
A task force has been formed to look into each case. So some students may get relief, but this episode highlights a much larger problem, a big crack in the system. It wasn't just the students who were fooled. It was also the visa officials and the Border Services Agency. And this may be a big conspiracy, but it's not a unique one. Such scams are more common than you would imagine. So-called education counselors routinely lure students abroad. They charge a hefty fee worth tens of thousands of dollars, and in return, they offer fake papers in substandard colleges. And yet students approach them. They want to take the risk. Why do you think that happens? For multiple reasons. There is no dearth of world-class education in India, but getting admission is tough. India's top universities are excruciatingly competitive. Cut-off entry marks easily hit 99%. So what happens to the other students? Where do they go? In some cases, education is not even the primary goal. A foreign degree is seen as a pathway to migration. And you can blame India's job market for that. Unemployment topped 8% in the month of April in India. Graduate unemployment is even higher, about 18%. A study says 83% of Indian students believe an overseas degree will give them an edge, that it will enhance their prospects for securing a better job. So today, Indian students study across the world, Canada, Australia, the UK, the US, and these are their top choices. And Canada ranks first because it's also the cheapest of these. The quality of education is comparable, there is no language barrier, and tuition fee is lower than other Western players. So Indian students flock to Canada, and fraudulent agencies exploit some of them. As we track this latest case, we do hope it serves as an eye-opener for others who plan to apply. Now to the biggest story from India, the violence in Manipur. I'm sure you've seen the pictures, houses on fire, gun battles, ethnic clashes. It's been a really worrying couple of weeks. And on Tuesday, things escalated even more. 9 people were shot dead in the village of Aijiang. Take a look at this map. It is located in southern Manipur. It's also very close to the Myanmar border. Why is that important? Because some groups are pointing fingers across the border. They say militants from Myanmar were behind this attack. Now, this is a very complicated issue. The violence itself is internal, but the fear is that outside elements could hijack it, that insurgents could feed on the fear. So let's look at the fundamental issues here. How did the violence start? What is the threat from Myanmar and how serious is it? To understand the violence, you must know Manipur's demography. Two groups are important here. The Meitei community, which lives in the valley, and the Kukis, who live on the hills. Meiteis make up around 53% of the state's population. The Kuki community is around 28%. Now, these are numbers from the year 2011, more than a decade old. We don't know how they've changed in the years since. The Meiteis have generally dominated state politics in Manipur. All except two chief ministers have been from this community. The Kukis are a scheduled tribe, ST. Their land and culture is protected by the Constitution of India. They also have quotas for jobs. But the Meitei community does not have the ST tag, and that is the root cause of this conflict. Because Meiteis want to be declared a scheduled tribe. They claim their numbers have fallen, their language is under threat, and their ancestral land is being taken away. The Kuki community disagrees. In the month of March, the Manipur High Court got involved. It asked the state government to recommend ST status for Meiteis. That's when all hell broke loose. Tribal groups took out marches across the state. There was arson and shooting. So far, around 116 people have died. More than 1,700 houses have been burned down, and around 40,000 people have been displaced. India's Home Minister Amit Shah visited the state this month. The Indian Army is also on the job. Yet the violence refuses to die down. The clashes on Tuesday were the biggest since May. Houses were set on fire. There was gunfighting on the streets, and in the end, 9 people died. Reports say they belong to the Meitei community. So that answers the first question. How did the violence erupt? Now to the second one. What is this threat from Myanmar? Let's pull up that map again. Manipur and Myanmar share a border, a 400-kilometer long border. It's very porous. Less than 10% of that border is fenced, meaning it's very easy to cross. And this has led to two problems. Number one, there is a steady flow of refugees, especially after the coup in 2021 in Myanmar. Meiteis say that these refugees are close to Kukis and they're altering the state's demography. The other side, of course, denies this. The second problem is more insurgency. Each group had their own extremist sidekick, like the Kuki Revolutionary Army or the United National Liberation Front, UNLF, which is a Meitei group. They used to be very powerful once. But today, these groups are based in Myanmar. The dense jungle near the border is a perfect place to hide. The current violence seems to have given them an opportunity, the perfect opportunity, a chance to reignite the insurgency. The state government already suspects that. They'd accused groups from Myanmar for the violence last month. So the question is this: what can be done now? The obvious option is to solidify the border. Home Minister Amit Shah did talk about it. He says efforts are underway to survey the entire frontier. Listen to this.
परमानेंट सॉल्यूशन के लिए हमने म्यांमार और मणिपुर की बॉर्डर पर पहले ही ट्रायल बेस पर 10 किलोमीटर बाड़ लगाने का, फेंसिंग करने का काम हमने पूरा कर लिया है और 80 किलोमीटर के काम को हमने टेंडरिंग कर चुके हैं और बाकी की बॉर्डर की हम सर्वे भी चालू कर रहे हैं.
Can India expect help from Myanmar? That seems unlikely right now. India does not support the military junta, although it does engage with them. India has called for a return to democracy in Myanmar. Plus, the Myanmar border area is dangerous terrain. It is not completely under the junta's control either. The government clearly has plans to contain the situation, but urgency is key. There is an internet ban in some parts of the state. There's also Section 144, a curfew. While the short-term solution is clearly internal, in the long term, India will have to deal with the Myanmar question. Get ready to bend backwards at work, and this time literally, and openly fall asleep in office. Just remember to do it in the Shavasana pose, because now you can give your regards to the Y break. I'm joking. But the Y break is no joke. It stands for a yoga break, and India's central government is urging its employees to take one, to do yoga at their office desks, to quote-unquote de-stress, refresh and refocus. After all, yoga has the power to calm the mind and strengthen the body. For thousands of years, it has hooked practitioners around the world because yoga is for everyone, the young and the old, the overweight and the fit, and apparently Indian government employees too. Here's a report.
This is BKS Iyer, a world-renowned yoga exponent. It's understood that his last words were, "I have lived a majestic life." Majestic. You may agree that this adjective can easily be used to describe him. Just look at his photos. He is grey-haired and bendy-bodied. So observing these pictures may affect you in two ways. At first, his scary suppleness is awe-inspiring, but this feeling is soon followed by despair, oozing out of most people who can't even touch their own toes. But it's not too late, because that's the beauty of yoga. It is for everyone to do, and anyone can start at any age. Now, the expectation isn't to perform Cirque du Soleil acts. Even simple yoga at one's office desk can do the trick. And that's exactly what the government of India is urging people to do. The centre has asked its employees to take a Y break. It stands for a yoga break, so employees can do yoga at the workplace. And the centre has suggestions too, some light practices which only require a few minutes of break from work, like the ones you see in these visuals. The protocol compromises of asanas or postures, pranayama or breathing techniques, and dhyana or meditation. These techniques originated in India over 5,000 years ago, but today millions across the world practice them. Simply because yoga really is as healthy as people say. It requires little to no equipment. It can be accessible to nearly everyone. And it's linked to wide-ranging health benefits. Yoga reduces stress and body pain. It improves sleep and cognition. Research also suggests that it improves balance, strength, and flexibility. A study says that practicing yoga can help reduce fatigue in cancer patients. It can even cut the risk of the disease spreading. But that's not all. Yoga also offers wide-ranging mental health benefits. It reduces anxiety and stress and elevates one's mood. Why? Because of the mind-body connection. Yoga is an intentional practice. It requires focus from both mind and body. While exercising, like jogging, people often distract their minds on purpose. That isn't the case with yoga, and this is what makes it an enigma of benefits. This is crucial in today's day and age. Office goers complain of backaches from sitting at desks, or chronic wrist pain from typing away day on day. These problems even have fancy names. Have you heard of the office syndrome? It refers to the inflammation of neck, shoulder, and back muscles. A study says that 8 in 10 office goers suffer from such pain. Our work life is grueling and, ironically, sedentary at the same time. Thus far, our office desks have witnessed clawed fingers clacking away at keyboards, stacks of paper, and stashes of coffee mugs. But now they can witness something completely different, something healthy, which can save us from daily stress and physical pain. And the solution is simply a few minutes of yoga, right here at our desks. But if you don't know where to begin, we have a tip. Why not start with laughing yoga, directed at your boss's jokes? After all, it could have unexpected benefits.
And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. We're starting with India. A fire broke out at an educational institute in the national capital, New Delhi. Students climbed down the building using wires. Meanwhile, an overcrowded migrant boat capsized and sank near a coastal town of Greece. At least 79 people drowned. Some migrants were rescued by helicopter. And in Peru, a 3,000-year-old mummy has been found. Archaeologists say this could be a case of human sacrifice. Finally, what makes the 15th of June significant? We're taking you back in history. On this day in 2001, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, or the SCO, was founded. It was a successor of Shanghai 5, which was founded in 1996. The aim of the SCO was to focus on regional security issues. India became an observer in 2005 and a full member in 2017. We're leaving you with this. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Aquí ya me dio uno. Está bastante erosionado, ¿no?